I'm so honored to be here. This is such a huge pleasure for me because the moment that, you know, the moment you meet a teacher in your life, you feel there's this deep sense of I know I've always needed to come to this moment. And that's one of my Tommy is one of my teachers in that. You know, when I met this man, just like most of you have, there was something there. There's this it factor. There's something about the presence of an individual that allows you to just go, you know what? There's a piece here that I need. And that's Tommy for me. He's one of those guys for me that I absolutely adore. And I'm just honored that I get a chance to speak to all you amazing people. And I've done so on a number of occasions, and this one is extra special to me for many reasons. And one of the main reasons is that we get to talk about some stuff that I really get excited about. And this is really what the chemistry of bliss is all about. So this is important for so many reasons. One of my main reasons why getting into the brain health is so important is because my mom had a stroke about 4 years ago. And so it actually blew out a part of her brain, and she's still in recovery. Thankfully, she made it through, but this is a huge, huge issue for so many people. And brain health is never used to be a big part of my understanding, but man, is it ever a big part now. And it all has to do with, you know, who we decide to show up in the world for. And I had to show up in the world in a bigger way for my mom and dive into this information because, you know, I felt like her healing depended on it. So for this work that we're going to share with you, this is essential learning on so many levels, but it all ties into, again, meeting our teachers. Sometimes there's messages in these little moments we have in life that we really have to choose to listen to. And so one of the big pieces that I think is important is that what is your willingness to learn? You know, what is your willingness to really step in to this higher version of who you are? We have this idea in our culture that we're our bodies. We have this idea that we're these meat suits walking around, having these lives, waking up in the morning, going to your job, having the frustrations of the day, coming home, you know, dealing with whatever's happening at home, you know, spending a little bit of time with the kids, and then rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And sometimes it takes a teacher to show up in our lives to go, you know what? There's another way. There's another option that's available to you. And that, you know, if someone asks the question, how do you meet your teachers? You just have to be willing to learn, and they start to show up. And part of the receptivity of it is really, you know, sometimes it's a life event. You know, for my mom, it was a stroke. For someone else, obviously in this community, this is where addiction plays a role. You know, sometimes getting into such a rut that the rut itself, the life situation, becomes your teacher. And teachers take the form of many different shapes and sizes. They're people, they're books, they're you know, programs that you watch. There are things like this. There's lots of different ways that we, you know, invoke a teacher, but a teacher is not always a person. And if we tune into what we're going to be diving into in a more great detail, every moment is your teacher. So how do you start to get in the consciousness that each moment you're being taught something? How do you open up to this experience? Because your teacher physically will definitely show up at some point in your life, but every single moment you face, every single decision that you make becomes a teacher for you. And so, yes, it takes faith, it takes belief, it takes intent, it takes so many different things. And then we have to ask the question, how willing are we to learn? And this is going to tie into everything we're going to be going into. So let's go to the next page. Now, I just want to bring up some reality for us. You know, there's you know, if we look at the global statistics for different things that people are facing, you know, this is a reality that we're dealing with. And I say this all the time to people on our talks and in person and everything else, is that globally, or in our Western culture, we're losing the battle in health. We're losing the battle to disease management. And how can we not lose the battle when we haven't seen ourselves as the big version of us? that spirit, whatever your, definition of spirit is, informing a physical body. So what is your, how can we operate a system that doesn't see the hierarchical connection that we all have and we all operate from? It's These are two different systems altogether. There's been evolution in many different things in the car industry, in the tech industry. Um, there's been very little innovation in the school industries, and unfortunately, our health system is at a snail's pace. So these are some crazy stats, and if hopefully you've read Tommy's book. If you haven't, obviously that's probably, step one. But understanding that the role of addiction goes well beyond the things that we're maybe abusing. Drugs, alcohol, of course, are some of them, but we talk about food addiction, money addiction, relationship addiction. There's a ton of different ways that we can become addicted to things, and then as Tommy teaches, what are those other aspects that are tying us to the addictions? And so, 1 in 16 people have a drug and alcohol addiction. That doesn't include anything else. 1 in 10 kids are on psychotropic medication. 1 in 9 over 20 years old have diabetes. 1 in 8 deaths are not considered preventable. The rest are. So that would be accidents and things like that. 1 in 7 adults are more on cholesterol drugs. 1 in 6 kids are considered developmentally disabled. 1 in 5 pre-adolescents are obese. 1 in 4 women are on antidepressants. 1 in 3 Americans get cancer. And 1 in 2 people die from the first symptom of heart disease. What's the warning sign? There's lots of warning signs, but just in the medical model, there are only a few. Or the main one is that an event has happened. And then everyone is developing some level or some degree of dementia and Alzheimer's. So is it important to spend time in meditation and evolve our thinking and change the way that we relate to our body and all sorts of things? Of course, and this is an unfortunate reality. Every patient who walks in the door has brain fog. So that's a part of this whole dynamic. So let's define bliss. And I'm going to tie 2 words together, bliss and flow. When I think of bliss, I think of something that's much more ancient. It's been there since the beginning of time. It's a state of absolute rapture and elation and just great joy. And every sacred text would talk about a state of bliss. So it's reaching a state of perfect happiness and oblivious to everything else. And then let's talk about flow. Flow is interesting because this is a relatively new term. And it was first described in 1990 by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, which is a really challenging name to say, as you can see if you looked at his name down there. But this is a really, really important definition. So it's optimal states of consciousness where we feel our best and perform our best. Being completely involved in activity for its own sake, the ego falls away, time flies, every action, movement, and thought follows inevitably from the previous one, like playing jazz. Your whole being is involved and you're using your skills to the utmost. Okay, please raise your hand. Who here would love to tap into the experience of flow and bliss on a much more regular basis? Or yes, let me know. Because this is ultimately, yes, good. This is ultimately the state that, makes us spiritual beings having a human experience. What if we all started to recognize that this is our operating system, right? What if we gave up the idea that struggle and discomfort and we had to learn our lessons all through the Saturn teacher being the middle finger. The middle finger, as Guru Singh, if any of you follow him, says that this is how learning life lessons through difficulty. So what if we changed the paradigm? What if we could unlock the potential within the body, within the brain, within the physiology to move into an experience of learning through flow? So sink into that for a moment, because that's exactly what we're going to talk about. Moving out of the disease model paradigm, moving out of the struggle in order to succeed paradigm, moving into flow, moving to bliss. What if that was your operating system? And I'm really encouraging all of us to change our paradigm around this discussion right here. I mean, this is where it starts. What if you chose that as your operating system? How would life look? What would be different? What kind of results would you get? What kind of results would you expect? And this is important, especially in the recovery community, because so much of what drives us is a fear of going back to the past. So much of our discomfort is knowing we don't want to be where we were. What if in this journey towards our self-discovery, we start choosing a different paradigm, a different operating system? And that's what I'm encouraging all of us to do. So here's some cool things. These are some things that we can all start to develop. So here's some pieces, some tools to invoke this state of this chemistry within the body on a regular basis. So lots of people talk about goals, concentration, participating in an intrinsically rewarding activity. We're going to talk about intrinsic versus extrinsic. Super important. Losing feelings of self-consciousness, that's like that body awareness when we're in a deep state of meditation, or we're so immersed in an activity that we just start to that we get a bit of senselessness of where our body is. We feel a different aspect of our body. Being able to immediately judge your own progress in like immediate feedback. Timelessness, losing track of the time passing, knowing that your skills align with your goals of the task, being in absolute trust that you are on the right path and you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, and lack of awareness of the physical needs because you're tuning into the energy of the body, and it's just basically a complete immersion. So these are some states that we would all like to achieve, right? Who hasn't been reading a book or watching TV, or who hasn't driven their car and has been on a completely different journey than what is actually right in front of you? The reality is that we're doing this all the time. We're constantly activating a different aspect of our consciousness. We just may not be invoking in a way that's actually supporting our bigger goals, our bigger desires, our bigger needs as human beings, as opposed to human doings. And this is important stuff, because what if you started to apply the tools that allow for this to show up on a regular basis? And this is the invitation here. So same thing here. I mean, this is just getting so focused in what we're doing. And essentially what's happening in this experience is that, and I'm going to talk about this more in a moment, but when we're in this state of flow, in this state of bliss, we actually start to move out of our prefrontal cortex. So this is sort of the physiology of what's happening. We start to understand that time doesn't seem so linear. And again, this is the easiest example here for everybody, is when you're driving a car, you don't remember how you got from point A to point B. It's like you were in a timeless state. Now obviously that's a bit scary, but it's a reality. That's our ability to operate in the world that we're in and still be in connection to something greater than ourselves and be off in different tangents. But it's this time dilation effect where we actually move out of our prefrontal cortex, and it's actually getting into a different aspect of our brain, which is called the heart brain. And what happens when we can actually apply this to something really strategic, or something, it could be a sport, it could be an activity like yoga, it could be meditation, it could be creative writing, it could be something really powerful. If we learn to bring in some of these tools that allow for this to show up, we can get so much more out of what we're trying to create. Okay, moving on to the next one. So other pieces here, why this is important. Well, we live in a world that's massively impacting us all the time. We're getting so much information, commercials, TV, radio, people's opinions, our phones. We're getting constantly distracted in so many different ways. And what if we were able to speed up our ability to learn something? And one of the things that Tommy and I are going to be teaching a lot more of in this upcoming course is actually how to take this and apply it to food, take this and apply it to nourishment. But you can take this same recipe and apply it to so many different things. But in this world of oversaturation of information, it's really important that we learn how to acquire skills more effectively. And sometimes the skill doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can be just learning how to breathe. It can be learning how to meditate, knowing the difference between a deeper meditation from something that's more frantic. Um, and one of those tools, you know, part of developing the brain and preventing illness, especially Alzheimer's dementia, is enhancing the energy of the brain to allow for better recall, better memory. And that is a skill that all of us can develop. It's not something that just deteriorates as we age. You know, this is part of a worldview that we all get stuck in, is that things happen a certain way. Things are very linear. We get old and then we start to die. You know, we get old and disease starts to kick in. We have an opportunity to completely change this paradigm when we understand this chemistry of bliss through acquiring these different states of consciousness. Because it's in these different stages of consciousness where we fast forward or accelerate our ability to learn, our improvement in memory, our ability to activate a state of joy, a state of learning, to move into a different relationship in our recovery journey. All this can be activated in this state of bliss. Now, just to get a little bit, you know, look on the other side of things, to slow it down a little bit, it's very possible that the very thing that all of us were searching in the form of an addiction was really just essentially this. And I say that again. What drove us toward an addiction sometimes is because we're trying to manage pain and illness. Sometimes it's because we're trying to manage pain in a relationship. Sometimes it's because we feel like the grass is greener on the other side. You know, if you're young and watching this, maybe there's some peer pressure that you have to do what other people are doing in order to feel like you're part of the tribe. There's many different aspects that have allowed for an addictive pattern to show up in our life. But ultimately, what we are searching for is an altered state of consciousness, a higher perspective or a different perspective, a different version of what our reality is telling us at this point in time. And this is what all of us have influence over and a possibility to experience on a more regular basis once we start to apply some of these tools. So being more purposeful in life, accessing intuition, quietening the mind, getting out of that executive functioning, which is the prefrontal cortex. The highest part of the brain is also the one that, you know, can take us on a bit of a roller coaster ride. So we have to learn how to quiet that down. Now, we talked about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. There's a great book called Motivation 2.0. I think the guy's name was David Pink or something like that. But it really changed the dialogue of a reward-based system where if you do A, you will receive this reward. It could be financial, it could be acknowledgement, it could be whatever. That's an extrinsic reward, something that maybe benefits you from an outside source. Intrinsic reward is being so devoted to whatever it is that you're doing that you're actually being pulled towards it. And so this is my hope for all of us, is that we start to develop such a profound daily practice in what we eat, what we choose for ourselves, nourishing wise, what we choose for ourselves, relationship wise, what we choose for ourselves in that internal dialogue with ourselves. And that becomes a self-fulfilling reward because we start to feel more joy, we start to feel more bliss, we start to improve memory, we start to improve our sleep and our energy and all the vitality and immune function. All those things are innately tied to optimal health, is actually tied to an intrinsic reward. And so what does it take to adopt some of this stuff? And creativity, dreaming, there's so many different aspects that we can access when we start to learn how to apply the tools of and then the right chemistry in this experience. Keep going. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Okay, good. So we're just gonna, because we're gonna take it a little bit more into some more information, and we just want to make sure everyone's following along. And I have a little exercise for you in the middle too. Oh, someone asked a really good question. I just trying to keep track of all the questions that are coming through, but someone asked if our thinking basically creates our illness. Oops. Or something along those lines. This kind of ties into what I'm saying. Does it mean that illness is our fault? No, of course not. But guess what? Obviously, we're physical, we're emotional, we're spiritual beings. We've been taught from the age of 0 to 7 a certain worldview. Our brains are actually stuck in a record state, this theta state, which we're going to talk about in a moment. And this is where we're learning everything. It's an adaptability tool that allows us to be of service in our environment, to feel like we're a part of the tribe, that we follow the rules and guidance and whatever. So let's take, for example, let's say you were raised in a family that maybe there was a lot of sickness, maybe there was a lack of self-care, maybe there was oh, I'll deal with that later, that's not important, what's more important is that I take care of you guys and then I'll serve myself. So in that kind of reality, yeah, we're taught a certain way of being, and so that operating system absolutely changes the neurochemistry of the brain, which feeds the intelligence of the body to decide how it's supposed to operate in the world. There's a whole lot more to it than that, but in just looking at how we think about ourselves, and what I'm going to teach on a little bit more in a bit is form follows energy, or form follows flow. So what we think about, we create neurochemically. That neurochemical soup, the blood matrix, influences every single tissue, organ, gland in your body and tells it the status of how the person is perceiving environment. So hopefully that lands a little bit. There's some responsibility there for sure in diet and exercise and movement and that kind of stuff. But there's sometimes the patterning of our brain and how we're relating to our environment, how we're perceiving stress, is absolutely adding to the complication of any sort of illness. So it's a really, really important discussion because that really determines, the reality of how we're looking at ourselves and how we're looking at, success, and how we're looking at what it means to be healthy. All these the different pieces are going to affect our body's chemistry. And it's just the repetition, right? The repetition over time really solidifies this into our body. So this idea of time dilation is really important because there's actually an anatomical change that happens in the body. We talked about before this hyperfrontality. So when we're in this hyper-focused, high concentration, it could be like a sporting activity where you're just so focused, or and I know this has happened to me in near-death experiences and different things like this, where basically it feels like everything kind of slows down and answers start to come to you. I'm going to tell a little story on this because it will make sense in this experience. I had a really intense experience on a retreat that we taught last February. And after the retreat was over, I was swimming in the ocean with my dad. And my dad had never been in the ocean before. And he got out past the break a little too far through my encouragement, like, hey, let's have some fun. Let's, play in the waves. He had no idea what to do once he got out a little further. And I'd been surfing for a number of years, and I really understood the ocean as best as I knew. And I wasn't really tuned into the fact that he was going a little further than he should. At one point, I looked around and, oh my God, where'd he go? And I saw him. He was about 20 yards away from me, and I just swam over to him because I saw the look in his face. And I'm going to fast forward this a little bit, but there's a message here. We eventually got him in. It was very close to where we almost did not bring him in. But there was an experience that was happening as we were getting thrashed and crashed and tossed around in these waves, and the waves are coming in real heavy on this afternoon. There was this experience that I had where I was getting washed so much, and I was exhausted because I was carrying him in. I was carrying him in, and I had to ask for help, and I got a bunch of people to help me bring him in. He was very slow in his swimming. He was done energetically. I was near done energetically. But what was happening is you could only take so much air every time you come up. I would take the air that I could and get hit again and just tossed and tossed and tossed and tossed. And there was moments where I was in that experience where these ahas came up. These ahas that told me, you can hold your breath longer. You can hold your breath longer. You can actually breathe a little bit of water and you're still going to be okay. And I just I was taken back to my Kundalini yoga practice of breath suspension. Imagine complete physical exhaustion, and maybe some of you have been in this experience, complete physical exhaustion, the absolute agony and stress of thinking that I may have killed my father, um, using all the energy in my body to pull him in, seeing the distressed look on his face. It's it's been hard to change that experience for myself. Um, but the message that came through so loud and clear for me was, you've got more breath. You've got more breath. And it's just like this gift that kept coming to me in every crash. And we eventually got out. But what that is an example of this time dilation. It felt like hours, maybe it was minutes. I don't know how long we were out there for. But the point is that when we're in this experience, information comes. And it comes to you in such a way that's the exact information that you need. The filtration of everything else going on disappears, and it's one focus. It's one point of information, the absolute thing that you need in order to survive. And that kind of experience is so important, because that's where truth comes. That's what deep states of meditation can do. When we start to train our minds, train our body to get into this state, we get the right information, and it saves our lives. So this is something that's not just unique to you. You don't have to have a near-death experience. Please don't to access this state. And please, know that this is something that is actually built into our physiology. And there's an actual recipe in order to invoke this state within the body. And we need it to learn. Because I tell you what, that experience has led to a bunch of other experiences in my life over this past year that have forced me to step up in such a bigger way. As a husband, as a father, as a doctor, as a business owner, as a collaborative friend, or as whatever, it's forced me to start to answer to one word. And that word for me is trust. I learned, it's funny, and this is all tying in, so I'm not just wanting to get a monologue about myself, but there's teaching moments here. The one thing that I hear people say often when they have these near-death experiences is gratitude. Thank God that everything worked out, gratitude that you're still alive. I couldn't figure out why that was not my word. I was kind of irritated with myself. You should be grateful to be alive. You should be, grateful that your father's still alive. I wasn't. When I looked at my father at dinner that night, I saw death. I saw loss. I wasn't grateful. Not at all. There's no gratitude there. I saw like a ghost of my father. I saw all the things that could have happened. But what eventually, and this is where time comes in, there's the time dilation effect, and then there's the depression that comes after a flow state. And this is so important, because this ties into the recovery. This ties into, taking 2 steps forward, what feels like 3 steps back. Depression, downturn is a massive part of the healing process. What are you going to do in that experience? What are you going to do in that downturn? I didn't know what to do. It took me a while to come out of it. And it actually took Kundalini Yoga for me to really start to receive the gifts of it. But the word that eventually came out was trust. Trust my practice, trust the intuition of my body, trust the higher power, what that means to me. Trust came out of that information for me. But the important piece of this is that we were in a physical environment. We were playing in the waves. That was bliss for me. Taking my father to the ocean was absolute bliss. It was absolute enjoyment. It was amazing father-son bonding experience. There was extreme joy in that. There was a distraction. There was sort of like, we're just playing. Then there was an event that forced me into this flow state, and then there was a crash. There's 4 parts to this anatomy that we're going to go over in a little bit, but I'm going to tie it back to this story, because this is so important whenever we're moving through stages of healing. Things don't always make sense immediately, and that's okay. And that's actually built in. It's supposed to be like that. It's absolutely supposed to be like that. So we're going to dive into this anatomy a little bit further I always find having a story helps this make sense. So flow follows focus. Is this part of the sympathetic nervous system? Yes, we're going to go there. So flow follows focus. In order for this flow state, this state of bliss to be invoked, we have to be absolutely just entrenched in an experience. And, to the best of our ability. And so one thing we're going to talk about is going to be the exercise in a moment, but there's certain situations that actually activate this flow state in the body. So high consequences, right? So that's risk. It could be, like playing in the ocean. It could be action adventure sports. It could be a social risk. It could be a social risk could be literally, if there's any single people in this conversation right now, a social risk could be literally going up to someone that you have a crush on, that you thoroughly enjoy and you would like to get to know more, and just presenting yourself to them. A social risk could be going to a movie by yourself. I don't know. It could be something where it's taking you out of your comfort zone. Yeah, having a difficult conversation, that's a social risk. Not or feeling like you're disrupting the tribe, that's a social risk. There's lots of, like, we can think about lots of different things that like trigger a risk for us. And then it's deep embodiment, because in that experience we can do one of things. We can avoid the pain that we're feeling. We can go, wow, this is really intense. This feels really, really intense. And just kind of sit with that, surrender to it, right? We can analyze it, the head brain, or we can go, whoa, I feel that really deep in my body. I feel it really deep in my soul. And that's the idea, right? The idea is to actually move into an experience and then just acknowledge the embodiment of that experience. And that's beautiful. It's, yeah, surfing the wave, that's it. And then the third thing is a new environment. A new environment could be a social environment, it could be an outdoorsy environment, it could be whatever. But it's just putting ourselves into situations that are invoking these changes to show up. And it's about a mindset, right? So think of some environments that trigger you, you know. And it's funny, I mean, it's not a you that the number one fear, in the world is public speaking. And, we've all been there. Feel that racing heart. And what's funny is that the actual racing heart is your friend. It's that deep embodiment. It's actually forcing you into a state change. The problem is that when that state change is arising, the mind starts to try to analyze and trigger thoughts onto that experience. And so the problem is we move out of that, whoa, this is intense, and move into the thought, and then we're lost, right? So think about that in every experience that you're in. When something triggers you, are you going to move towards it and go, I'm going to feel this, or are you going to try to move away from it? Take this to the level of learning new food, different ways to cook, making a new health strategy, whatever that is. Allow yourself to feel the discomfort of the moment and allow yourselves these new environments. And a new environment is a new internal environment too, right? It's allowing yourself to operate from a different mindset. So this is part of creating the right mindset and anatomy for this to happen. Another little story here. This is me having a Spartan race experience. I was always a competitive basketball player, up into college, and competitive sports like would get me in that flow state all the time. And for the longest time, I was avoiding this because getting uncomfortable was not safe. It was uncomfortable. So why would I want to do that? So having an experience of a Spartan race was actually such an uncomfortably blissful state to be in that it made me want to have more. And so I put this up here because it was really hard for me to decide to do this. And, all the racing heart, all that stuff was happening during this experience. But just jumping into the experience was a gift for myself, and it taught me a ton of different lessons. So that was one of my other uncomfortable situations. So here's where we're going to get you to do a little exercise. So hopefully you've got a pen and paper. What I'm going to ask you to do, and I'm just going to sort of keep blabbering on, please, if you have paper access, you've got a pen, write this stuff down. because this is your moment to actually take some of the stuff that we're teaching and applying it to your life. And it could be even a story. Maybe it's something that you did in the past that really scared the crap out of you, but you did it anyways. Maybe it's, it could be something as small as you're in a group environment, you decide to speak up. What scares you? What triggers you? And what kind of mindset are you allowing yourself to have? Because in a healing mindset, in a mindset moving through recovery, a heart set moving through recovery, are you meeting your moments and surrendering to the feeling, or are we trying to avoid and push away? And what are some things that you've sort of been calling to you? Like maybe there is someone that you know that you need to speak to. Maybe there is like a conversation you need to have. Maybe there's maybe you want to do a Spartan race and you want to get really physically uncomfortable. Speaking at a meeting after many, many years, amazing. That's phenomenal. How are you going to meet your moments? Exactly. What are you going to do? What's the mindset you're going to have? This could be strategy for moving forward. Think about that, but write them down. When you start writing them down, pen to paper, you're actually getting that, that tactile honesty happening on a script. And so important to take that idea and move it into a reality. So think of some other things. Maybe you always used to be active. You'd like to get out there and play basketball again, play volleyball, whatever it is, and you're feeling a little nervous about going into a group environment of people you don't know. Maybe you've always wanted to do some writing, and you just, maybe that's something. Maybe you've wanted to do public speaking, you decide to do get involved in a networking group, or maybe you've decided to do Toastmasters or something to just move into a discomfort. My hope for all of you that you'd entertain this and try to, maybe over the next month, have a plan of something that puts you into an uncomfortable place. And you know what? Even being uncomfortable with the challenges that we're in and being in a group environment like someone shared, this is important stuff. So think about the big ones, the ones that really scare the crap out of you. And then the small ones. Someone wrote down scared of intense road rage drivers. Yeah. We don't want to put you in life or death situations. So thanks for that disclaimer there. That's not the goal here. This is not about putting ourselves in danger in any sort of way, but emotional danger, maybe a little bit, perspective danger, maybe a little bit. How can we move into a little bit of discomfort and then choose to embody that feeling, feel it deeply, not move into the thought patterning, but just really feel that, surrender to it, and then allow ourselves to move through. Yeah, being more visible online after being ostracized and criticized, trusting again. Yeah, there's a big you, and then there's the meat suit version of us. If we're operating from the meat suit version of us, it's gonna be really hard to move forward. When we operate from the infinite version of us, and we feed that through the physical body, now we're on task. Amazing. Okay, good. So hopefully you had a chance to write some things down. I'm just going to go into a little bit more of the detail of these, the 4-part cycle that I alluded to with my ocean story. So step 1, there needs to be a struggle. There needs to be a challenge. It could be learning new information. It could be trying something new. It could be, studying something. It could be like getting down and writing, whatever that is. There has to be a bit of a struggle, a load on the brain. There has to be a challenge for the brain. Number 2, you step away. You can step away, in your mind. You can physically step away. In my story in the ocean, me stepping away was just, everything's cool, everything's great, we're just having fun. Whatever that release is for you. And what I'm going to teach you in a sec, or what you're going to realize, is this is a yoga class, which is amazing. Number 3, this is where we enter into flow. This is where there's no triggers. We've just moved into the experience. So maybe you've taken some time away. You've taken some time away from the experience. And now in yoga, you could be just like sort of wandering, oh, this class is great. I'm loving this class. And then all of a sudden you just sink right in. And so what we said here, trading the conscious versus subconscious programming. So now, like in that number 2, that release, we're just kind of like, we're in a bit of a dance. We're not really focusing in on anything. We're just kind of letting it go. We're letting the subconscious take over. And then you move into that state of flow, that state of just pure knowing, of just pure awareness of the moment. And this is where the time dilation, this is where the changes happen. And so, yeah, this is where there's the trigger of neurochemicals. And that's the state. This is the state where we enhance our learning, enhance our intuition, get into creativity, move into bliss, feel the joy, feel whatever we need to feel in a massively heightened state of awareness. This is where someone can get, even injured and have no pain whatsoever, because the right neurochemistry, the right soup is being circulated inside the body. Number 4, this is a state that I really, really, really would love the recovery community to really start to pay attention to, because this is the one that really matters. This is the coming down period. This is where things feel like they're going really bad. This is the fall after the hit of whatever that addictive substance was. This is the crash. Oh, sorry. Someone said, what is the no? Nitric oxide. It's that dilation. Like the blood vessels are pumping and blood's flowing and the neurochemistry just moving through your body in such a rapid pace. That's nitric oxide. So 4 is the crash. 4 is where everything comes down. This is where we jump into our old habits, our old patterning. We distrust the moment. We start to go, did that really happen? No, it couldn't have happened. This is where we really start to question everything in our lives. And this is also where those old addictive patterns start to resurface. If we broke this down, understood that there's an absolute process to everything that we choose to learn, choose to take on, this could completely, nitric oxide, not metric oxide, this could completely transform how we choose to learn our life's lessons. Like someone mentioned earlier, we either meet the moment and realize or choose that the moment is going to overwhelm us, or we meet the moment and understand there's a criteria of things that we need to follow in order to access the state of flow. But we have to understand there's this downturn, there's this crash. Who here, please tell me, yes, 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 yes. Who here has been in a state where they felt like they've experienced a state of flow? Please tell me. Yes, I want to see lots of yeses, because I imagine there's tons of yeses. Everybody has had this. And if you don't think that you have, go back in a timeline and start looking back at your really elated experiences. We're human. We've all had to have had these states at some point in our life. Now remember, what happens right after that? Guaranteed you crash. You're like, how did I feel so good? How did something so profound happen? And now I'm back to normal life. Right? Someone said when they're doing their art, beautiful. Then there's a crash. Guess what? The crash is absolutely built in. Who here has felt the crash? Please say yes, yes, yes. Me. Yeah. In it now. Yeah. My goodness. My heart goes to you. It's horrible. It's a deep, deep discomfort. But guess what? It's built in. What if you had some relief in knowing, especially after a retreat? Yeah, huge. What if you had some comfort in knowing that that is just a part of the dynamic of evolving these tools in your tool set? What if you could just prepare for it? It's kind of like you're going to run a marathon, and then you know that the 5 to 10 days after the marathon, you're going to feel pretty crappy. You're going to feel a little tired. It's going to be a little hard to get going. What if you just started to take that and apply this tool set to everything in life? It would absolutely transform the state of how we choose to move through life, right? So super, super important. The anatomy of understanding is critical. Geez, I realize that, see, this is why I made slides, and I'm going off in too much detail, but I think it's important. I'm not going to get a chance to go through all the slides by the end of this, but I'll save it for another one. But we need to learn how to change that mindset of struggle and move into how do we become better at recovery, right? We're a recovery community. How do we get better at the downturn? How do we prepare for what's about the crash that's about to come? How do we Know that that's there and just believe that that's part of the journey, and know that we're going to get through it. What's your toolbox look like, right? What does your toolbox look like? And because if we decide to move into the thought patterning attached to that feeling, then we're just running the cortisol game. It's just perpetuating that problem. And unfortunately, we're not taught this. We're not taught that there's this certain anatomy to how we move through these states of advanced learning. We're just taught a regular school system, right? We're just taught how to really, like, how do you learn? How do you memorize something? What do you do after you graduate high school? What's next on the list? It's very linear. We don't tap into infinity and then apply it. We don't tap into infinity and grab information and use it in our lives. We don't tap in that higher potential that all of us have and then have a tool to bring it into form. We're just taught you struggle, you work your butt off, you check that box, you move on to the next thing, you remember and you regurgitate, and that's our style of learning. So think, is it possible that, again, with our tools of recovery, that we've got so stuck in the same system of learning that we have to struggle and keep moving through challenges in order to get to this inevitable, recovered state? Well, what if we just understood that we have anatomy and anatomy of flow, and we can build this in, right? So that's what I'm challenging or encouraging all of us to. Let's buy into, or let's trust that there's a different operating system at play that actually enhances and serves our physiology. So because I got like a lot more content here, I'm just going to give you some of the neurochemical activity, and then let's just talk about what's coming down the pipeline for you guys to take this information deeper. So we've got norepinephrine. That's that, oh, this is intense. This is like we're getting ready for action. It's a preparedness. Dopamine is like what's facilitating that action steps. And together, it's a beautiful chemistry. Like the whole piece to this meeting of the molecules is that all of these big 5 molecules are getting released in these states of flow. It's not just that, oh, I'm deficient in serotonin, I should take some 5-HTP, or I'm running low on anandamide, and so I need to get a drug or whatever that helps to invigorate that state. Or same with epinephrine. My adrenals are depleted, so I'm not secreting epinephrine. This happens no matter what. There's a way to optimize this through nutrition, et cetera, et cetera. But norepinephrine together with dopamine, that takes your lateral thinking and links them together. That means that things that have association are brought into alignment, so you can fast track your ability to put sequencing of events together. Anandamide, ananda means bliss. There you go. That's the bliss molecule. And that's bringing different ideas and linking them together. Like something way over here and something way over here that don't seem to make sense. In this state, you're able to bring these two and they start to make sense. And it also improves our ability to take information and move it into memory. Amazing stuff. Someone wrote, yeah, beautiful. Someone wrote, sounds like how I felt after childbirth without the drugs. That's exactly what's going on. The oxytocin that's getting released, the norepinephrine, the dopamine. I mean, all these things, it's a perfect chemistry of moving into a state of bliss. And then serotonin it's that state of contentment, like being good with what's going on, right? So like in the craziness of being in a very intense situation, you're getting these other kicks of just like, everything's gonna be okay. I'm not my body, I have a body. I'm of higher intelligence, information, having this experience, sensing less of our body and moving into our energy body, hypofrontality, moving into our heart. Serotonin. Endorphins, reducing pain, increasing mood. So think about this. In order for this state to be optimized, all these different neurochemicals and hormones, which we're not talking about tonight, but they're all moving into this state, this frequency that allows this stuff to happen. Okay, I just noticed that we're a little over 6. I've got a lot more information here, but what we're gonna do is I'm gonna leave some stuff open to. I'm gonna go to one of the last slides here. Start from the current slide. I just want to hit home on this point here, and then what we'll do is we'll throw in some more of this information on a future webinar because it's obviously really important. We didn't get a chance to dive into the food, but I want practicality tools here for you. What does your sadhana look like? What does your daily practice look like? You know, when we think of achieving different states of bliss or energy, like, you know, people say this all the time when they come to the clinic, I don't have enough energy. You know, well, what are you doing to invoke a state of energy in the body, right? What are you doing to invoke a state of higher learning into the body? So what does your sadhana look like? What is your daily practice? What are you doing on a regular basis to start to learn a new way of operating? So write down the anatomy of bliss or flow state. You know, think about the practice of Kundalini yoga. I mean, the beauty of what Tommy's done of bringing this information into this world of recovery is just so important because it's a tool set to activate a higher state of consciousness. So if you started to understand that the anatomy of a yoga class actually has this stuff built in, like think of stretch pose. Oh, it's uncomfortable. Like you think about stretch pose like, oh, geez, I got stretch poses coming. It's gonna be really hard. And then you move through it and then surrender. And then it's like stretch pose was never there. But the whole yoga class, your whole morning could really move us into an experience of this flow state. And this last little comment on this part here is we have the really important, we have a more difficult time acknowledging the micro changes moving us forward than we do the awareness of us regressing. Okay, really, really important stuff here. We have a more difficult time acknowledging the micro changes as we move forward as opposed to the awareness of us regressing. So basically, we're really good at beating up on ourselves. We've got a built-in mindset of where things could be causing harm for us, where things are not working. It's a part of a strategy for survival. And so it's very, very normal for us to want to find out where things are not working. But it's much harder for us to have gratitude for the little changes that show up over time. So, you know, with that, you know, this whole learning experience of moving through your healing journey, whatever that is for you, gratitude. I'm moving forward. I made a little change today. It got a little bit better. I think I did something that's serving me in a different kind of way. This is fantastic, you know. And then what we can do is we don't take a look back at yesterday, but we take a look back a year ago. Go, wow, look where I was a year ago. A lot of stuff has had to happen for me to get to where I am. You know, if I look back a year ago, you look back 5 years or whatever that is, you know, and really, you know, that's what's that little like sense of regression. You know, we say you missed 4 or 5 days of your daily practice, whatever that is for you, and you look back and go, oh man, I'm not a good human being anymore. I'm, you know, all the self-sabotage that starts to come in. You know what? Screw it. I missed 5 days. I'm done. You know, it's all we gotta do is just get back 1 or 2 more days. We've started to fill in the gap of the last 5, and we just keep moving forward. So the whole point is that this is absolutely a journey. And when we can invoke this anatomy of flow into our system, we can start to actually move it into higher states of knowing and awareness. Okay. So I'm going to just highlight some of the things that are coming down the pipeline. Tommy and I have so much amazing information coming for you guys that we're going to be getting together on this Thursday for a special online workshop. Tommy's such a brilliant man, and I love that he's inspired by the stuff that we teach through physiology and hormones and detox and food and everything. We're just going to keep unfolding this information. The reality is we're in a time right now where we have to start to take ownership over our health. The fact that you guys are here tonight, the fact that you've decided to show up, you've participated, I'm assuming you participated, I can't see you, but I know that there's a vibration of the stuff that I'm sharing here that's going to hit home for hopefully most of you. And we really, really, as a collective, need to know this stuff. We need to take ownership over it. We need to keep building this recovery community because you guys are the people who have been through some really challenging times that can teach. You guys are in a position to really, really unfold information on such a powerful way because you've got that deep sense of knowing. So make sure you sign up for that workshop on September 5th. It's going to be fantastic. And for those of you who are really wanting to take this much deeper, our food course is starting October 5th. It's going to be running till November 2nd. It's a 4-week food course nutrition program. If you were in it last year, come back. It's about repetition. If you haven't done it yet, prepare yourself for a life-changing experience that keeps on giving. More information, there's more diving into some of the sciences I love to bring in. And the collaboration with Tommy is just allowing us to take this information in such a bigger way. So make sure you're part of this experience. As some of you said there, cannot wait for another food course. It's gonna be fantastic. So super inspired to be working with Tommy and hearing all your stories and learning from all of you. Just super, very honored to be here. So thank you all so much for listening. I think there may be a couple questions. Stacy, are we okay to answer a couple questions? So I'm going to do my best to answer these questions. There's a couple here. So are the old addictive patterns and also the intuition both in the subconscious brain? So there's different people that describe the subconscious mind versus the conscious one. I know Bruce Lipton talks about the 5% consciousness in the conscious mind. That's where 5% of our control, 95% is driving the subconscious. But the way Guru Singh talks about is that there's this level of super consciousness that makes up 20% of our higher capacity. So I think it's a bit of a relay system. We have to be in a conscious choice place that puts us into an environment that allows for information to surface from the subconscious mind that triggers the superconscious. So one of the slides that I unfortunately missed here, just because I rambled maybe a little too much in certain topics, but was that there's something interesting in the different brainwave states. So we've got delta, which is our sleep state, theta, which is our like a dreaming or deep healing state in our body. It's also a state of deep meditation. And then we've got alpha, and then we've got our sensory motor rhythm, and then we've got beta, and then we've got high beta, and then high gamma. Now, hits of knowing, hits of intuition are linking, or they're in a gamma state, and they're linking gamma to theta. And so when we're in deep theta meditation and we get strokes of insight, that's coming from a gamma brainwave frequency that it's an aha moment. And so I think it's enabling everything: consciousness or conscious mind, subconscious mind, superconscious mind. But the actual electrical capacity of the brain is these linking behavior of gamma to theta. So hopefully that answers things. The science seems a lot. Will I keep up? Don't worry about the science. All you need to know is that science is proving what we're seeing. So there's information that's serving the yoga philosophy. There's information that's serving nutritional philosophy. Like we're here. We've arrived at this moment that's allowing science to explain things. Do you need to know it? My goodness, no. I really encourage you to understand that flow. The anatomy of flow. I mean, I think that's really important stuff if we all started to move into that experience. Anandamide is involved in marijuana use, right? Absolutely. Yes, that's the THC triggers, CBD may a little bit as well, but THC definitely triggers the release of anandamide. And this is the funny thing, like, drugs in this realm of brain chemistry, you're limited. Like you're limited. You're not getting the full chemistry of what can happen in these altered states of consciousness through putting yourself in these experiences. So, just like cortisol, it's a rev up state, right? People use ephedrine and different herbs and things like that to rev us up. But that's just one. You're only working with one tool in the entire tool set. It's kind of like you're going to build a house and all you've got is a hammer, right? You need a saw, you need nails, you need a hammer, you need wrenches, you need screwdrivers, you need plumbing, you need electricity, you need a whole lot of other things to come together, right? So I know that wasn't really what you're asking, but yes, anandamide is activated by marijuana. Any tips to move through procrastination? Yeah, the first one, I think, to move through procrastination is understanding why procrastination is there, actually allowing yourself to feel that state of like non-performance. And, going back to the subconscious and the conscious mind, there's a muscle in our bodies, the largest muscle, called the diaphragm. The diaphragm is under conscious control and subconscious control. If we want to start to move through procrastination, start to use your diaphragm more. Get your butt to the floor, learn some breathing, and actually activate this massive, important muscle that fires up the engines of the body. There's a whole anatomy of like how motivation and things like that comes to be. I mean, I think understanding some of how important it is, even posture and alignment, getting our body into proper secretion because of alignment, because of our anatomy. Guru Prem is an amazing facilitator in this information, as is obviously Guru Singh, as is Tommy. So moving through procrastination sometimes just changes with our posture. We know that science has shown us that sitting tall, Superman pose, actually raises testosterone, lowers cortisol. So there's some tools we can utilize just for that. And then, I would say go into that anatomy of flow, put yourself into a challenging situation, which may be like, again, having a difficult conversation, doing something that challenges you a little bit, and then realizing that there's a victory there at whatever degree that is for you. Recovering from back surgery, depression, how do I get to flow? Yeah, great. So the body's obviously working in a deep state of inflammation or trying to overcome through circulating more anti-inflammatory activity in the body. One of the big tools here is, how are you purposing the blood in your body? How are you nutrifying your system so that you've got the right chemical makeup through the right kinds of foods to bring down inflammation? That's huge, right? And I mean, the problem with surgeries is it usually involves medications and other things that really start to affect the neurochemicals. So utilizing food is an amazing, amazing tool to massively bring down inflammation. And there's lots to teach on that. Of course, that's significant. But think about, again, slowly moving as much as you can. Movement's big. A lot of my mentors would say that rest isn't a stimulus for repair. So wherever you're at in your ability to move, own that, get comfortable with it, and just slowly start to support yourself a little bit more wherever you can. And you got to do it through food. Food is hugely important. I mean, someone like you going through the challenges post-surgery, the food course would be phenomenal for you. I mean, there's gonna be so much information there that's gonna feed you in your healing experience. Okay, so I think that's it for the questions. Am I gonna put these slides on the website? What I'll do is I'll just give Stacy the slides, and then she can share them with you. And yeah, you guys have lots of great questions. I think, in the past, Stacy, in the past, what we've done is, if you guys have questions, go into the Facebook page under where it's presenting or is talking about the talk for tonight. Write your questions in there, and I'll do my best to answer all of them. So just populate that with any questions that you feel like I didn't go through or you want to get clarification on. The remaining slides fill in a lot of the details, I think, but this topic is just so important to understand the anatomy of flow. And so there's more information there, but I'll give the slides to Stacy, and then post your questions on the Facebook page. And you guys have a phenomenal night. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's a huge honor. Thanks to Tommy, Stacy, the entire crew. Thanks to all of you lovely people. Look forward to seeing you again, and lots of love to all of you.